to the Football Game Plan College Football Tailgate Show, presented by Football Game Plan. I am David Hasagen. I'm joined as always by the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt. Week 7 was a week of upsets upon upsets across college football. Now we are past the midway point, and it's time to think about postseason positioning and talk about our mid-season superlatives. A lot of surprising teams this year, Emery, so far. Who's the biggest team in FBS that you've been most surprised by?
Well, it's two teams. I look at SMU and Minnesota. SMU, it should go without question. When you look at a team that hadn't had this level of success since the early 80s with the Pony Express, you talk about Eric Dickerson, Craig James, and how they've been able to run the football back then. Really good powerhouse in the 1982 season. They go through the death penalty. They don't really get their footing back. Yeah, they made some bowl games, in the 90s and in the 2000s, but now they're undefeated. They're 6-0. They're playing fantastic football. They're looking like a team that could make some noise in the AAC. In Minnesota, in the Big Ten, one of the sleeping giants. This was a powerhouse football program in the early 30s and 40s. Had Heisman Trophy winners. Now the Gophers rowing the boat to an undefeated record, and they're playing really well. Now, yes, they're starting to go into the meat of their schedule, but I think SMU and Minnesota are the two more surprising stories or teams this year in college football.
In the FCS, you got to look at Sacramento State, too. They've had a great year on top of the Big Sky. And UT Martin, top of the OVC through Week 7. So it'll be interesting to see if they can hold that place as we get closer to the postseason. Who's been your most disappointing team so far?
I would probably say UCLA because we knew first year under Chip Kelly, it was going to be a rough transition, and you understood that when you have a new coach trying to bring in his own system and his style of play, his culture. All of that was supposed to happen last year. This year, you want to see them build on top of that and have some success and start to move forward. UCLA has looked as bad as they did last year under Chip Kelly, so I'm worried about UCLA. They had some good play in spurts, but not consistency, and they've looked terrible as the season has worn on. So we'll see if this thing gets turned around, but right now I think UCLA is the most disappointing.
And for the FCS, Colgate's got to be the disappointment of the year after an incredible season last year. Now 0-7 to start the year, a loss to Bucknell in conference. They are a completely different team and not in a good way.
When you talk about Colgate, you're talking about a team that had 5 defensive shutouts last year, only giving up 3.2 yards, points a game. Run defense was excellent. Pass defense was excellent. Offensively, they ran you into submission. Their offensive line was beating up on opponents. They won a game in the playoffs that beat James Madison, who's right now number 2 in the FCS. So them being 0-7 and losing to Bucknell and losing the way they have lost this season, yeah, you're right. They may be the most disappointing team in all of college football.
Really disappointing for sure. Let's talk about the Heisman Trophy now. We're at the midway point. Favorites are starting to emerge. Who is your favorite right now?
Well, you know what the Heisman is always about, who's winning and who has the Heisman moment and all that good stuff like that. I like Jonathan Taylor of Wisconsin, but he's probably not going to be a finalist or the front runner for the Heisman because he plays a position that doesn't yield itself to win the Heisman. I remember it used to be a running back award, but now it's going to go to the quarterback. So if that's the case, I like Justin Fields out of Ohio State and what he is doing with that Buckeyes program. Transferred from Georgia, and it was going to be interesting to see how he was going to transition going from Athens to now Columbus. He has stepped in for Dwayne Haskins and has done extremely well, not only as a passer, but also as a runner. And his dual threat capability really makes this team a potential playoff team moving forward.
I think Jalen Hurts has got to be up there as well. He's done a great job at Oklahoma, got a big win over Texas this past week.
You talk about transfers, Jalen Hurts, and you have Joe Burrow, Ohio State to LSU, and you're seeing, Fields from Georgia to Ohio State. So all the transfers at that position seem to be landing and doing well at the new spots.
Right now, who are your 4 teams in the college football playoff? Because obviously the college football rankings have not come out yet. It's still the AP poll. We'll get a better look at how the system is working in terms of the college football playoff. Who's your 4 team field right now?
Well, let's look at Alabama, number 1. They have one of the more explosive offenses in the country. 4 legit receivers that will be playing on Sundays, as well as their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, who could also be in the mix for the Heisman Trophy. But Alabama would be 1. I think you look at Oklahoma playing in the Big 12 and how they're doing with their offense with Jalen Hurts and how much success they're having. And quietly, their defense looks really good. And rare that we're talking about defense in the Big 12, but you're talking about Oklahoma, you're talking about Baylor, K-State, all those teams are playing really good defense. So Oklahoma, I think, will move on into the playoffs. And I would look at 2 other teams being wild cards right now, because I know Alabama plays in the SEC and maybe only one SEC team makes it, but LSU has a chance to be the second team from the same conference to get in. Joe Burrow has been a godsend for that program. Their passing game is phenomenal. They just made light work of the Florida Gators this past weekend. And if they can beat Alabama, or if Alabama beats them, whoever wins that game, I don't think it will be detrimental to their success moving forward. So it's good that they're playing when they do, because that team that loses won't be in the SEC title game and put themselves or expose themselves to potentially another loss. So there's room for both teams to get in. And my final team, Clemson. Again, going through the ACC, reigning champions, undefeated. There's no way an undefeated ACC champ Clemson team doesn't make the playoffs.
For me, I got all three of the teams except for Clemson. I think Ohio State's a better team. I think they've put together better performances offensively. Clemson's been very, very shaky. Obviously, they don't have a very strong schedule going on later in the year, but I think Ohio State is a much better football team, and I think the voters will see that.
That's going to be interesting, because you have Ohio State and Clemson probably fighting for that final spot. Because I do believe with the story of LSU in the passing game, and we know this game against Alabama will be a classic, an instant classic, and people will want to talk about the rematch. When they're going to play again. You've seen this before with Alabama and Georgia, and how that regular season game got them both into the playoffs. So you're right, Clemson and Ohio State, that's going to be the one to watch, see how that shakes out as it moves forward.
Well, let's now get into our game of the week in the FBS, a top 25 matchup in the Pac-12. Maybe the last chance for a Pac-12 team to maybe get a spot. The number 17 Sun Devils of Arizona State taking on the number 13 Utah Utes. Utah has been outstanding on offense, but the Sun Devils have been solid in every area under Herm Edwards. Both teams entered 5-1. What are two keys to victory for both teams to win this game?
For Arizona State, their true freshman quarterback, Jaden Daniels, has to make sure he continues to protect the football. This is a very opportunistic defense in Utah. Protect the football is going to be key. And on defense, they have to play team defense. You have to stop the run. If you allow Utah to run the football, they can do whatever they want on that side of the field and on that side of the ball. Stop the run, make this a passing game, and they can have success. For the Utes, it's all about playing your game. You come in understanding who you are as a football program. You love to play great defense. You're aggressive on both sides of the ball. You love to take your timely shots, but you love to grind it out on the ground. Play your game. Don't try to do anything unique or fancy for Arizona State. And secondly, confuse the freshman. You're playing a true freshman quarterback. He's talented, but there's going to be opportunities where he's going to get lapse in judgment. You want to take advantage of those. Make him think out there on the field. Take full advantage and make him one-dimensional. Close that pocket around him. Don't allow him free reign to run around, extend, scramble, and hurt you deep down the field.
Who wins this ball game and why?
I like Arizona State. No one talks about Herm Edwards and the job he's done with this program. He quickly got this program turned around. You saw it last year. They got to the Las Vegas Bowl, did well. This year, they look primed to make the Pac-12 championship game. They win that, then who knows where they end up.
Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. What's up, everybody? Be sure to check me out this weekend at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, as I will be the color analyst for the Monmouth Hawks Gardner-Webb Running Bulldogs football game on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app.
Welcome back to the College Football Tailgate Show here on the Game Plus Network. David Hastagen here with Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. It's now time to break down some of the big matchups in the FBS. We start with two teams who had very different results last week. Number 10, Georgia lost a heartbreaker in double overtime to South Carolina, while Kentucky went with a wide receiver at quarterback and won. Both were unexpected. What can we expect this week in this SEC clash?
Well, it's funny because when you look at Kentucky playing their wide receiver at quarterback and him having success, you can only do that against certain teams. And they can't do that this week against Georgia. They need help at that position. They have to be able to throw the football. It was mainly a running game for Kentucky last week. But you know what I'm saying? You can't let one loss become two. We'll see how Georgia quickly responds to the loss against South Carolina. It was a field goal that was missed. That's understandable. They can quickly get over that. It wasn't like they got dominated. I think they take care of business and knock out the Wildcats. They won't let that one loss against the Gamecocks come into this game against Wildcats and put them down again. They still have a chance at the college football playoff. They just have to make sure they win out the rest of the way impressively.
Especially coming out of the SEC East, so all they have to do is dominate there. they can get to that.
They still have the game against Florida, too.
Huge game coming up later in the year. Next up, we go to the ACC. Duke taking on Virginia. UVA dropped from the rankings last week, but Duke has been the real story, a real surprise in the ACC this season. Two teams that have been overall pretty strong. How do you like this one going?
Yeah, when you look at Duke beating Virginia Tech and then coming back last week in a game that could have been a game where they laid an egg against Georgia Tech, they dominated that game. Virginia went on the road to Miami and had a chance to really knock out the Hurricanes. They were 2-point underdogs in that ball game, which really didn't make sense to me considering how good Virginia is. But we saw how good Miami was coming off their victory against Virginia Tech. So maybe Virginia Tech was an elixir that a lot of teams needed to get back on the right track. I actually like Duke in this ball game. I think Duke right now is starting to get that confidence, and they're going to win against the Cavaliers.
Who knew we'd be talking about Duke football at this point of the season again? Let's move on to the next matchup. Temple taking on number 19 SMU. Strength versus strength in this one. Temple's defense has been outstanding. SMU, gun and shoot, has been absolutely outstanding this year, but they got a real test in Temple.
But don't undersell their defense. Their defense has also played a role in why they are undefeated. Temple's defense, phenomenal, goes without saying. Quincy Roche is one of the best defensive players in the country. He'll be playing on Sundays. It's going to be a real close game. I think both teams will come in leaning on their defenses to really help them push through and get the win. I still like SMU, a team that is playing with that level of confidence, like I talked about with Duke, and their offense is a little bit more proficient, and they have a little bit more ability to quick strike if need be. So I think the Mustangs, with just enough offense to get past Owls.
We get now to the AAC, a critical game for Tulane and Memphis. Both teams are 5-1. Both have some signature wins so far on the schedule, but if you're going to get to the AAC title game and potentially a bigger bowl game later in the year, it's a must-win.
Here's where one loss can become two. Memphis lost a tough one last week to Temple. Tulane quietly, when you go back and look at that Auburn game, they had an opportunity to win. Tulane wasn't outmatched against Auburn. We saw them the rest of the way. They knocked off a tough Army team. They're winning explosives. They put up a gang of points against UConn. I like Tulane in this ball game. Memphis probably was so worried about knocking off Temple that they're going to come out flat, I believe, and they're going to be primed for Tulane to take advantage. I like the Green Wave.
We move now to the Big Ten, a big clash. Number 16, Michigan, taking on number 7, Penn State. Can Michigan break through against an outstanding Penn State defense? The Wolverines have really struggled.
Here's the thing. You have Penn State's defense, which is the best. And you have Michigan's offense, which is starting to slowly find its way. But is Michigan's offense a real good offense? Or they had a good week. So I don't know what consistency level we're going to see from Michigan. I do know what we're going to get from Penn State's defense. Now, their offense had a little bit of a setback against Iowa, but they got the job done. KJ Hamler is one of the more explosive receivers in football. I think Penn State, more complete team than Michigan, they knock out the Wolverines.
And there's going to be a lot of pressure on Coach Harbaugh going into this week. A lot of rumblings. Again, it's easily one of the most pressure-filled jobs in all of college football. This is almost a must-win for him unless he wants to get the media on his back.
Well, imagine that, because now you come in, you're Jim Harbaugh, you're an alum, you played there, you're a great quarterback there, and you can't find a quarterback. The guy you brought in from Ole Miss, Shea Patterson, has been up and down. He had a good game last game, and you hope that is something that's going to carry on forward. But now you face a tough test against a defense that's going to apply pressure, and Patterson doesn't do well versus pressure. So we'll see how this plays out. But I think Penn State, because of how they play on both sides of the line of scrimmage and also their ability to strike quick with their playmakers, I think it's going to be another tough day for Michigan.
One last game to talk about in the FBS, a Conference USA matchup. Southern Miss taking on Louisiana Tech. Both are undefeated in conference play. Defense might be optional in this game. A lot of offensive numbers on both sides. Do you see some X factors in this game?
Well, Jamar Smith is the quarterback for Louisiana Tech. It does a great job in leading his football team to make an FCS equivalent. It's like Kenji Bihar for Monmouth and what he can do throwing the football. But I think the running game of the Bulldogs is what people don't give enough credit to. They can run the football, and they run it when they want to. So let's say they want to throw the football around the yard. Once they get inside the red zone, they're like, okay, we're going to run this football, and we're going to run it down your throat. We're going to get a touchdown. Defensively, they can still get after the quarterback, even without Ferguson, who's now playing for the Baltimore Ravens. They still find a way to affect the pocket. Southern Miss has speed. Speed can beat power, and that speed, I think, is going to give Louisiana Tech some issues. But I do like the Bulldogs to win this ball game Both of these teams are really good football teams, maybe one of the more entertaining matchups that we'll see this weekend.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Ninth and Lux. Visit the website ninethandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW and his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, art, life, entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app. Financial Coaching LLC. Investment, retirement, security. Stewardship Credit. Financial growth is in your hands. StewardshipCredit.com. Adrienne Marie Photo. Photographer, writer, management. AdrienneMariePhotography.com. Lock Multimedia.
Welcome back to the Football Game Plan College Football Tailgate Show. This week we'll be doing something a little bit different, a little rapid-fire coverage of a busy week of college football going on around the New York metropolitan area. We start in the FCS with an NEC matchup. Former D2 powerhouse LIU still looking for their first D1 win this week. They take on 3-3 St. Francis. Possible chance for LIU to get their first win here.
Possible, but St. Francis actually looks surprisingly strong this year, in my opinion. This was a team I thought coming into the year was probably a year or two away. Well, they're playing competitive football, and yeah, LIU has a chance, but I still like St. Francis to keep them on the winless side of the conference standings.
Let's move to the next one now. The CAA, URI struggling. Albany showing flashes of being a factor again in this conference and offensively have looked much better than years past.
Rhode Island has a string of bad luck, with the way they lost to Stony Brook and the way they lost some close games over the years. You even go back to last year, the way they lost that Central Michigan game, missed extra point in fifth overtime. So they've had their share of heartbreak. Albany offensively looks fantastic. And I just think that when you look at how well they play in conjunction with what they're going to face against Rhode Island, it's prime for a chance for them to keep going. But I do like Rhode Island to get the win. I'm a big Aaron Parker fan, the wide receiver.
Let's move on to Manhattan now. A big clash in the Ivy League. The Lions offense has struggled. Columbia taking on Penn. But the Penn defense has also looked pretty bad so far. Something's got to give in this ball game.
I like Penn in this ball game. The running game, Carrick and Brooks, one of the best running backs in the FCS. Columbia just doesn't look right this year. They're still a good football team, but it hasn't translated into wins. I'm going to go with Penn knocking off Columbia. So far, we're 0-3 in the metropolitan area. Let's see if we can keep it going.
Let's move now from Manhattan to the Bronx. Lehigh taking on Fordham. Fordham looking to keep it going after a nice win last week. Lehigh still trying to find their footing.
Fordham beat Georgetown last week. We know Georgetown was 4-1 going into that ball game with their only loss being to Davidson. Fordham quietly got the win against Richmond, got the win against Georgetown. They'll get the win against Lehigh. So New York is 1-3 so far this weekend. I'm going to go pick the Rams to win this one.
Let's move back to the Garden State next. A big game in the Big South. Monmouth taking on Gardner-Webb. The Hawks showed up last week crushing Presbyterian, but the running Bulldogs are much improved. This will be a test for Monmouth.
It will be a test, but I'll be the broadcaster on this game, the color analyst. You can find that at ESPN3. I'll be doing the color with Eddie Acapinti, so I can't pick this game. So I'll toss it over to you. Who you have and why in Monmouth and Gardner-Webb?
I think Monmouth will just edge out this game. I think Gardner-Webb will certainly give them more problems, especially in terms of getting the ball back. Gardner-Webb is very good at keeping the ball and using time of possession. I think Monmouth's defense, though, just has enough in this game. They showed up much better with the shutout last week against Presbyterian, so I think Monmouth will take this game. It'll be a tight one, closer than the experts think.
Fair.
Let's move now to Staten Island. Robert Morris taking on Wagner. Robert Morris has been dangerous this year, quietly getting 2 wins. Wagner looking to go 2-0 in conference.
Love the tight end for Robert Morris. Gonzalez, he's just as good as Troutman out there at Dayton. So Gonzalez is on the Senior Bowl watch list. Cam Gill, the linebacker for Wagner, is also on the Senior Bowl watch list. So there'll be a lot of pro scouts at this ball game to watch these two play. Right now, Wagner is reeling. They need this game. I think desperation is a stinking cologne, so you kind of want to stay away from it. But I just feel like they'll find a way to win. So I think Staten Island gets a win this weekend with Wagner.
Another FCS game to talk about. Marist hosting Dartmouth. Dartmouth has become a standout in the Ivy League. This is going to be a big test for Marist against a really balanced offensive attack.
Listen, if you can't win up front, you're not going to beat Dartmouth. And Marist has routinely produced some solid point of attack players. You've seen guys go from Marist to the NFL. This is a different animal. This is this year's version of Colgate. Dartmouth, I think, will win big up there in Poughkeepsie.
Let's move now to Division III. My alma mater, Springfield College, taking on Merchant Marine. Very rarely a blowout between these two teams. Springfield has struggled this year so far. How can you see this game going?
Well, here's the thing. You guys run the option.
Right.
You got to be able to stop the option. Merchant Marine did great last week against Norwich in the run defense department. Different animal here. Triple option attack versus someone that just runs football. I like your Springfield College. What's your mascots?
The Pride.
The Pride. I was going to say Pioneers, but I think the Pride will do just fine taking out Merchant Marine. Although the Merchant Marine squad's defense is good, but triple option is tough to prepare on and try to get it down packed. Yeah, I think you guys will knock this one out.
Always a tough matchup. Let's move upstate now. Rochester taking on Buffalo State. Big rivalry, both of them, though, looking for win number 1 on the season. Who gets the first victory this year?
Oh, man, this is a goose egg. Somebody has to win. No more ties in college football. Buffalo State has a really good wide receiver in Jordan Everett, who does a great job in just making plays downfield. Unfortunately, it hasn't translated into wins. They've come close, but they need their offense to kick it into gear. I do like Rochester to get this win.
Let's move now back to New Jersey. Christopher Newport traveling to Montclair. A big game in the NJAC. How do we see this one going? Because Montclair was expected to do much better than what they've done so far this season.
First of all, Christopher Newport has a fantastic campus. I was down there. It's in Norfolk, Virginia. There's a big statue, huge statue about the size of Sam Houston outside of the university. It was scary almost, but it's outstanding. With that being said, they're here on campus against Montclair, and they have to play Jaquil Birch and company. He's a quarterback, does a great job. Montclair hasn't been what we expected them to be, but I do think they'll get the win against Christopher Newport.
And one more game to talk about here. Misericordia taking on FDU. What does FDU need to do to get a win? It's going to be certainly a tough effort here.
Oz Nasir Blackman, 5'4", 170. He's the running back there, averages 7 yards a carry. He's from Irvington, New Jersey, Irvington High School, really good football program. Outstanding tailback, nearly 500 yards so far in the season. They're going to need every bit of his height, every bit of his shiftiness, every bit of his explosiveness to be successful, because they haven't been as productive as we've seen before, but the running game is productive. I think FDU gets the win down there in Florham Park.
It's going to be a busy week for sure, and don't forget to go out and support your local school if you live in the New York metropolitan area. That'll do it for the College Football Tailgate Show. Don't forget to go to youtube.com/footballgameplan for the FCS Conference Whip Around, and check out the FCS Opening Drive podcast on SoundCloud and iTunes, where Emery and I will break down all the FCS action every week. For Emery Hunt, I'm David Hassagen. Enjoy Week 8, and thanks for watching.